In the heart of Appalachia, a haunting mystery has lingered for decades. In 1965, a group of miners vanished without a trace, their disappearances sending shockwaves through their small mining community. Families were shattered, and hopes dwindled as the years turned into decades. Many believed these men had become mere echoes of the past, their stories fading into obscurity. But then in 2015, a sealed bunker was discovered beneath the hill where they once worked. A shocking discovery that would reignite the flames of hope and despair for the families left behind. For one woman, the pain of loss has never truly faded. Sarah Johnson, the daughter of one of the missing miners, has spent her entire life grappling with the absence of her father. As a little girl, she would often ask her mother where he had gone, only to be met with silence and tears. "We always held on to the hope that he would come back," she recalls, her voice a mix of sorrow and determination. But as the years passed, that hope began to feel like a cruel joke. It wasn't until that bunker was found that I felt a flicker of possibility. The miners were part of a close-knit community, bound together by hardship and the shared labor of extracting coal from the depths of the earth. On that fateful day in 1965, they entered the mine as usual, unaware that it would be their last shift. When they failed to return home, an extensive search was launched. Rescue teams combed through the rugged terrain, hoping against hope to find signs of life. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into years, the search efforts dwindled, and the case grew cold. As time passed, the families were left to navigate the agonizing silence. Birthdays and holidays became bittersweet reminders of the loved ones they had lost. Sarah's childhood was marked by an emptiness that she could never quite fill. "I always felt like part of me was missing," she shares. "Every time I saw a father and daughter together, it was a painful reminder of what I never had." But hope has a way of resurfacing when least expected. In 2015, while a team of researchers was surveying the old mine site, they stumbled upon a sealed bunker buried deep beneath the hill. Inside, they discovered remnants of life, personal belongings, tools, and evidence suggesting that the miners had sought refuge in this underground chamber. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community and reignited interest in the long-forgotten case. With the discovery of the bunker, Sarah felt a surge of determination. "This was my chance," she thought. "After all these years, maybe I could finally find out what happened to my father." Despite the skepticism from local authorities, who had long since moved on, Sarah began her own investigation into the bunker and its contents. She faced challenges at every turn, battling not only the indifference of those in power but also the ghostly memories of a past that refused to stay buried. As she delved deeper into the mystery, she uncovered startling evidence: a photo of her father taken days before his disappearance, alongside a group of men who seemed to share a secret. Each piece of the puzzle brought her closer to a truth that was more complex and darker than she could have ever imagined. The miners had not simply vanished. They had become entwined in a web of deception, betrayal, and danger. Sarah began to learn about a hidden double life, a criminal conspiracy that involved not only the miners but also powerful figures within the community. The deeper she dug, the more questions arose. Who could be trusted? What had really happened that day in 1965? With every clue she uncovered, Sarah faced a truth that felt more disturbing than the unknown. The answer to her father's fate would not be a simple resolution, but rather a confrontation with a dark legacy that had been concealed for decades. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, as Sarah found herself navigating a treacherous path, filled with shadows of those who wanted the truth to remain buried. But she was determined. With the memory of her father guiding her, she would not rest until justice was served, no matter the cost. In the weeks and months that followed, as Sarah continued to unravel the mystery, she began to realize that the answer to her father's disappearance was intertwined with the very fabric of her family's history. The truth would challenge everything she thought she knew about the men who had disappeared and the community that had mourned their loss. Now, as we embark on this journey alongside Sarah, we will explore the chilling story of the missing miners, the discovery that changed everything, and the relentless pursuit of truth that may finally lead to closure for the families left in the shadows of uncertainty. What secrets lie hidden beneath the surface? And will the truth bring justice, or will it unearth more darkness than anyone ever anticipated? Join us as we dive deep into this haunting tale of loss, hope, and the unyielding search for answers in Dozens of Poor Miners Vanished in 1965. 50 years later, a sealed bunker was found beneath the hill. In her search for answers, Sarah began combing through old newspapers and archived reports, each article a thread in the tangled web of her father's past. She uncovered unsettling details about the mine itself, the conditions, the safety protocols that were often ignored, and the rumors of corporate greed that loomed over the town like a dark cloud. As she delved deeper, it became apparent that the community's mourning was not just for the lost miners, but for the silence that enveloped their disappearance. Many locals had their own theories whispered behind closed doors, but few were willing to speak openly. There was a palpable fear of retribution from those who had benefited from the mine's operations, a fear that kept the truth buried, much like the miners themselves. Among the tattered pages of the past, Sarah found a name that kept resurfacing: William Bill Harrington, the mine's foreman. He had been one of the last people to see her father and the other miners alive. Yet, in the wake of their disappearance, he had vanished from town, leaving behind no trace. This man was now a ghost, but Sarah felt a growing urgency to find him. Equipped with a new resolve, she reached out to former miners who had worked alongside her father and Harrington. Many were reluctant to talk, but a few shared chilling tales of mishaps and cover-ups that had plagued the mine for years. They spoke of a sealed-off section, a place where the company had conducted secretive operations, and where safety concerns were routinely swept under the rug. Sarah's heart raced as she connected the dots. This bunker, the one found beneath the hill, might be more than a forgotten relic. It could hold the answers she sought. She envisioned her father's face, the warmth of his smile, and the promise she made to uncover the truth. With each passing day, the weight of the investigation grew heavier. Skepticism from local authorities only fueled her determination. They dismissed her inquiries, labeling her as a distraught daughter chasing ghosts. But Sarah pressed on, seeking the truth with an unwavering belief that her father's story deserved to be told. Then, one evening, as she sifted through documents in her small apartment, an email notification pinged on her laptop. It was from an anonymous source. The message contained a photograph, grainy yet unmistakable. It showed a group of men, her father among them, standing in front of a large, ominous building she recognized as the old mine facility. But what sent chills down her spine were the faces of the other men. They looked uneasy, glancing over their shoulders, as if aware they were being watched. The email contained a single line: "They never left." As Sarah stared at the photograph, a sense of dread washed over her. The implications were haunting. Had they been trapped? Or worse, were they silenced to protect a dark secret? With renewed urgency, Sarah decided to confront the past. She set her sights on finding Bill Harrington, the foreman whose silence had shrouded her father's disappearance in mystery. But as she began to unearth old contacts, she could feel the shadows closing in around her, whispers of those who wanted her to stop. The deeper she went, the more she realized that the truth could lead her to confront those who had buried it. And in a town where loyalty often overshadowed justice, she would soon discover that uncovering the past could come at a steep price. As Sarah prepared for what lay ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was not only uncovering her father's story, but also stepping into a web of deceit that might have repercussions beyond anything she could have imagined. The search for justice was about to become far more dangerous than she had ever anticipated. With her resolve set, Sarah reached out to old friends of her father, hoping to piece together the fragmented memories of that fateful day in 1965. Each conversation peeled back layers of the past, revealing a community gripped by fear and silence. The miners had been part of a brotherhood, but beneath the surface lay tensions and secrets that many had buried deep. One name kept surfacing: Bill Harrington. As the foreman, he had been responsible for the safety of the miners. Sarah learned that he had vanished shortly after her father, a ghost in a town that preferred to forget. Determined, she finally tracked him down to a dilapidated farmhouse on the outskirts of town, where he lived in isolation, the years etched into his weathered face. When Sarah knocked on the door, her heart raced. She was met with an elderly man who seemed both surprised and wary. After exchanging pleasantries, she laid out her intentions, sharing her father's story and the photograph that had reignited her search. Harrington's expression darkened as he listened, a flicker of recognition crossing his eyes. "They never left," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "I told them to stay away from the bunker." His words sent chills down Sarah's spine. The bunker, the very place she believed held the key to the mystery. But before she could probe deeper, Harrington's demeanor shifted. Fear flashed across his face, and he glanced nervously at the windows, as if expecting someone to be watching. "Leave it alone, Sarah," he warned, a tremor in his voice. "Some things are better left buried." But she couldn't turn back now. The secrets that lurked in the shadows demanded to be unveiled. Ignoring Harrington's plea, she pressed him for answers, but he clammed up, retreating into silence, unwilling to share the burdens of the past. It was clear that whatever he knew was tied to a darkness that loomed over the town like a thick fog. As she left Harrington's farmhouse, a sense of unease settled over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her. The streets felt too quiet, and the air thick with tension. Determined to find the truth, she headed to the town library to sift through old newspapers, searching for any mention of the bunker or the miner's disappearance. Hours passed as she scoured the archives, flipping through yellowed pages filled with stories of the town's history. Then she stumbled upon a chilling article, an account of an explosion at the mine, a catastrophic event that had been quickly buried in the aftermath. The foreman had disappeared right before the explosion. Was there a connection? As she pieced together the fragments, a realization struck her. The truth was not just about her father. It was about a cover-up that could implicate those still living, and it appeared that Harrington was not the only one who wanted her to stop digging. With each new lead, Sarah found herself navigating a dangerous path, one lined with obstacles and threats. The more she uncovered, the more evident it became that the past was far from dead. It thrived in the dark corners of the town, and now it was awakening, ready to confront her. Little did she know. She was drawing closer to the heart of a conspiracy that stretched far beyond the mine. A confrontation loomed on the horizon, one that would force her to face not only the truth about her father but also the reality of those who had worked tirelessly to keep it hidden. The shadows were closing in, and soon, someone would be forced to answer for the sins of the past. Sarah pressed on, her heart pounding with a mix of determination and dread. Each conversation she had brought new revelations, but also new dangers. The more she learned, the clearer it became that the sealed bunker beneath the hill was not just a forgotten relic. It was a vault of secrets that had been hidden for decades. She decided to visit the town library, where she uncovered a trove of old newspaper articles. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the fragile pages. Reports of miners disappearing, whispers of a corrupt management team, and hints of desperate families left without answers. She studied each article closely, searching for clues that might connect the past to the present. Among the articles, she found one that caught her attention, a photograph of a group of miners taken shortly before the explosion. Sarah's breath hitched as she recognized a familiar face in the crowd, her father. But alongside him stood a man she had never seen before, his gaze penetrating the camera with an unsettling intensity. It was a face that would haunt her dreams for weeks to come. Determined to learn more about this stranger, Sarah began her investigation anew. She reached out to former miners, family members of the vanished, and anyone who might have known the men who had disappeared. Many were hesitant to speak, their eyes darting nervously, as if fear still held them captive. Yet one old miner, his hands trembling but his spirit unbroken, agreed to meet with her. In a dimly lit diner, he recounted the events leading up to that fateful day in 1965. The foreman, he claimed, had been acting strange, worried about safety standards, and threatening to go public. He knew something was brewing, the miner said, but he was silenced before he could tell anyone. As Sarah absorbed his words, a chilling realization settled over her. The foreman had not just vanished. He had been taken out to protect a secret. But the old miner's story didn't end there. He hinted at a shadowy figure, someone who had wielded power over the men and who might have orchestrated the explosion. With newfound resolve, Sarah began to track down this figure, piecing together a network of intimidation and silence that had persisted for decades. It became clear that those who had once worked in the mines were afraid to speak out, fearing retribution from a system that had thrived on their labor and their fear. As she dug deeper, strange occurrences began to plague her. Phone calls were mysteriously dropped. Her car was tampered with late one night. The closer she got to the truth, the more desperate those trying to conceal it became. Sarah realized she was being watched, shadows lurking just out of sight, but she refused to back down. Every lead brought her closer to a confrontation she both dreaded and craved. She had to confront not just the truth of what happened to her father, but also the dark forces that had conspired to keep it buried. Time was running out, and with each passing day the stakes grew higher. Soon she would uncover the identity of the shadowy figure, and when she did, the truth about that fateful day would finally see the light of day. But at what cost? The conspiracy was unraveling, but Sarah could sense that the most dangerous part of her journey was just beginning. As Sarah continued her investigation, she stumbled upon a series of old newspaper clippings tucked away in the dusty archives of a local library. Among the faded pages, one headline stood out: "Miner's daughter goes missing. Unseen forces at play." The article detailed not only her father's disappearance, but also a series of suspicious accidents involving miners in the area. It hinted at a cover-up, a narrative of danger that loomed over those who dared to speak out. With renewed determination, Sarah reached out to a former miner who had been mentioned in the article. His initial reluctance faded as she pressed him for answers, revealing a dark secret that had haunted him for years. He spoke of a hidden relationship between the mine's management and local law enforcement, suggesting that her father had discovered something he was never meant to know. The miner described a clandestine operation, a scheme that involved illegal practices deep within the mine, where safety regulations were routinely ignored for profit. Sarah's heart raced as she realized the implications. Could her father's disappearance have been tied to this conspiracy? Was he silenced to protect the interests of those in power? As she pieced together the puzzle, she received an anonymous tip, leading her to a secluded area outside town. There, she found a small, weathered box buried beneath the roots of an old tree. Inside, she discovered photographs, grainy images of her father with men she recognized from her discussions about the mine. They were smiling, but the camaraderie in the pictures felt tainted by something sinister. Then she found a familiar face among the group. It was a name she had encountered earlier in her research, a figure who had managed to evade scrutiny for years, yet was deeply entwined in the mine's operations. A man she had always thought to be an ally in her quest for truth. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. The very person she had trusted could be a key player in the dark machinations that had led to her father's fate. Sarah's mind spun with the weight of this revelation. This man was not just a witness, he was a potential accomplice, someone who could have orchestrated the silence that had enveloped the case for decades. What had begun as a quest for closure was rapidly spiraling into a confrontation with a web of deceit that reached further than she had ever imagined. In that moment, she understood the true stakes of her investigation. This was no longer just about her father. It was about exposing a network of corruption that threatened to silence anyone who dared seek the truth. With every breath, she felt the tension mounting and the shadows closing in. As she prepared to confront this newfound adversary, she knew one thing for certain: the truth would no longer remain buried. But as she stood on the precipice of revelation, she couldn't shake the gnawing fear that doing so might put her life in jeopardy. Would she become the next victim in this chilling game of power and silence? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting for her to uncover it. With the chilling realization of the stakes weighing heavily on her, Sarah began to gather the fragments of information she had collected over the years. Every note, every photograph, every scrap of evidence seemed to whisper secrets long hidden. The sealed bunker had ignited something within her, a flicker of hope that the darkness surrounding her father's disappearance could finally be illuminated. But first, she had to confront the man who had cast a shadow over her investigation. The local authorities had long dismissed his potential involvement, labeling him as just another voice in a chorus of whispers. But Sarah sensed something deeper, a connection that defied their reassurances. As she made her way to his residence, she felt the chill of the air wrap around her like a warning. The house loomed before her, its worn exterior telling tales of abandonment and neglect. Sarah's heart raced as she knocked on the door, the sound echoing into the silence that enveloped the neighborhood. When he finally opened the door, the surprise in his eyes quickly morphed into a guarded expression. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of tension. "What brings you here?" "I have questions," she stated, her voice firm yet shaking with the weight of her determination. "Questions about my father and the bunker." His demeanor shifted, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something in his eyes. A glimpse of fear, perhaps? Or was it guilt? That was a long time ago. "There's nothing more to say." But Sarah pressed on, refusing to be deterred. She laid out the evidence she had, the testimonies that pointed toward his involvement. Each word was a thread weaving a tapestry of doubt, slowly unraveling the facade he had carefully crafted. She watched as his expression hardened, walls rising around him as he attempted to dismiss her claims. "I didn't know anything. I swear," he insisted, yet the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "You have to let it go. It's too dangerous to dig up the past." Dangerous. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Sarah's mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations, the whispers she had heard in the community, and the veiled warnings that had been brushed aside. There was something he was hiding, something that linked him not just to her father's fate but to a larger, more sinister truth. The tension in the room thickened, almost palpable. She could sense that he was teetering on the edge of revealing something. But fear held him back. "What do you know about the miners?" she pressed, trying to break through the wall of silence. He faltered, his gaze darting around as if searching for an escape. "You don't want to go down this road, Sarah. Trust me." But trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. She took a step closer, her voice steady and resolute. "I need the truth. If you're involved, if you know anything, people deserve to know what happened." At that moment, a flicker of recognition crossed his face, and for the first time, he seemed to consider the implications of what she was asking. But just as quickly, the fear returned, drowning out any glimmer of cooperation. "You're playing a dangerous game. You have no idea who you're dealing with." With that, he closed the door, leaving Sarah standing alone in the fading light. The confrontation had left her shaken, but it also ignited a fire within her. She was no longer just the daughter searching for her father. She was a woman on a mission, determined to unearth the truth no matter the cost. As she walked away, the weight of unanswered questions pressed down on her. But one thing became clear. The sealed bunker was more than a relic of the past. It was a gateway to secrets that could unravel everything. And Sarah was willing to step through it, even if it meant confronting the darkness that lurked just beyond the surface. The next phase of her investigation awaited, and with it, the promise of revelation, or peril. With renewed determination, Sarah returned to her mother's home, a place filled with memories of laughter, love, and loss. She carefully laid out the documents and photographs she had gathered over the years, hoping to find patterns in the chaos. Among them was a faded newspaper article detailing the disappearance of dozens of miners, each name a painful reminder of lives forever altered. As she studied the article, something in the back of her mind began to stir. The names of the missing men resonated with her, but it was the mention of a foreman, Frank Miller, who had been the last person seen with many of the miners that caught her attention. Frank had been a well-respected figure in the community, but as the investigation wore on, whispers of his involvement had begun to circulate. Sarah decided that it was time to dig deeper into his life. The following day, she sought out anyone who might have known Frank. The townsfolk were hesitant, their eyes darting nervously at the mention of his name. One elderly woman, however, finally spoke up. "Frank was a hard man, but he had his reasons. There were things going on in those mines that nobody wanted to talk about. Sarah's heart raced as she probed further. What do you mean? What was he involved in? The woman leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. There were rumors. Talk of a hidden operation, something more than just mining. People thought there were tunnels that led to something sinister, but nobody dared to investigate. It was too dangerous. The words echoed in Sarah's mind, intertwining with the secrets of the sealed bunker. She felt that each thread she pulled might lead her closer to the truth, but it also unspooled a web of danger. Determined, she began her search for more information about Frank's activities before the disappearances. As days turned into weeks, Sarah's investigation brought her to the local library, where she scoured old town records and mining reports. She uncovered a pattern of financial discrepancies and strange transactions linked to the mining company. It became clear that something larger was at play, a potential cover-up that reached far beyond the missing miners. Yet with each discovery, the tension grew. Sarah began receiving anonymous messages warning her to stop digging, messages that chilled her to the bone. Leave it alone. You're playing with fire. But fear only fueled her resolve. With every late night spent poring over documents, she found herself more entwined in a mystery that refused to let her go. She realized she was not just seeking justice for her father anymore. She was uncovering a story that could threaten powerful figures within the community. As she pieced together her findings, Sarah's focus shifted back to the sealed bunker. What other truths lay hidden beneath the hill? What if the answers she sought were buried in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered? Then, just as she began to plan her next move, a chilling realization washed over her. The very people who had gone missing were not just victims, they might have been part of something much more dangerous. Perhaps they hadn't vanished at all but had been silenced to protect a secret that could unravel a town. With her heart pounding, Sarah prepared to confront the next layer of this grim puzzle. She was ready to face those who had threatened her, and those who had hidden behind shadows for too long. The sealed bunker loomed larger in her mind, a dark invitation to uncover the truth. But she knew that with the truth came risk, and she was now standing on the precipice of discovery or disaster. With newfound determination, Sarah made her way back to the sealed bunker, the weight of its secrets pressing down on her. Armed with her flashlight and the knowledge gleaned from her research, she felt both exhilarated and terrified. Each step toward the entrance felt monumental, as if she were crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. As she reached the entrance, she noticed the rusted padlock that had held the door shut for decades. With a deep breath, she pulled out a crowbar and began to pry it open. The creaking metal echoed in the stillness, a sound that seemed to awaken the ghosts of the past. Finally, the door swung open, revealing a darkness that felt alive, as if it were waiting for her. Inside, the air was stale, carrying with it the weight of years gone by. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating dust-laden shelves and what appeared to be old mining equipment. But it was the far wall that caught her attention, where she spotted something unusual. A series of markings etched into the concrete. They looked like names, hastily scratched, perhaps by desperate hands seeking to leave a trace of their existence. Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the names. Among them, she recognized her father's. It was a chilling confirmation that he had been here, that he had not simply vanished, but had been trapped in this hidden world. The realization sent shivers down her spine. He wasn't alone. As she continued to explore, she stumbled upon a collection of photographs scattered across a dusty table. Each image depicted miners, but they were not the cheerful faces she had seen in family albums. These men looked gaunt, their eyes hollow, haunted by a fear that seemed to transcend time. One photograph in particular caught her breath, a group of miners standing in front of the very bunker she was in, their expressions grim and resolute. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the entrance, snapping Sarah back to reality. Her heart raced as she turned to see a shadowy figure silhouetted against the fading light. Panic surged through her as she realized she wasn't alone. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. No answer came, only the sound of footsteps retreating into the darkness. Adrenaline coursing through her veins, she decided to follow. The figure moved quickly, and as Sarah navigated the narrow passageways of the bunker, her mind raced with possibilities. Was this someone connected to the disappearance or merely another lost soul? With every turn, she felt the walls closing in, the weight of the town's buried secrets pressing down on her. She was on the brink of something monumental, but with it came a growing dread. What if she uncovered not just the truth about her father, but also the sinister forces that had conspired to keep it hidden? With each step, Sarah's resolve deepened. She was determined to confront whoever was behind this, to bring to light the truth that had been buried for so long. The darkness of the bunker was no longer just a physical space. It had become a metaphor for the secrets that had shrouded her family and the town for decades. In that moment, Sarah understood that the confrontation she feared was inevitable. The truth she sought was not just waiting to be uncovered. It was actively resisting her, ready to defend itself against discovery. She steeled herself for what lay ahead, knowing that the next revelation could change everything. As Sarah pressed deeper into the darkness, her heart pounded in rhythm with the echo of her footsteps. The air grew thicker, heavy with dust and memories, each breath a reminder of the pain that had haunted her family for decades. She could almost hear the whispers of the miners, their hopes and dreams trapped in this forgotten place. What had happened to them? What had been hidden within these walls? Suddenly, a flicker of light caught her attention. In the distance, a faint glow illuminated a large chamber. Cautiously, she approached, her instincts on high alert. As she neared the source, she could make out shapes, the remnants of machinery, old mining equipment, and something else, something that felt out of place. Sarah's heart raced as she stepped into the chamber. In the center, illuminated by the flickering light of her flashlight, was a makeshift altar. Scattered around it were personal belongings, a rusted watch, a frayed photograph, and a tattered miner's cap. Each item told a story, each a piece of the puzzle she had been desperately trying to solve. But there was one object that drew her attention more than the others, a small sealed box, its surface scratched and worn. With trembling hands, Sarah approached the box. It felt heavy with significance, as if it had been waiting for her to uncover its secrets. As she reached for it, a sudden noise echoed through the chamber, a soft scuffling, barely audible, but enough to send chills down her spine. She was not alone. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, their face obscured by a hooded jacket. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Was this the person she had seen earlier, or someone far more dangerous? "Leave now," the figure warned, their voice low and gravelly. "You don't belong here." The tension in the air was palpable. Sarah's mind raced as she considered her options. Could she confront this person? Did they know the truth, or were they merely a guardian of the secrets that lay buried beneath the hill? Wait. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm trying to find out what happened to my father and the others. I need answers, she pleaded, hoping to reach the humanity buried beneath the hood. The figure hesitated, the tension thickening as they seemed to weigh her words. "You have no idea what you're asking for," they replied, taking a step closer. Some truths are better left undiscovered. As they spoke, Sarah felt a mixture of fear and determination swell within her. This was the confrontation she had dreaded, yet here she stood, her resolve unbroken. She needed to know what lay within that sealed box, what the figure was hiding, and how it all tied back to the miner's disappearance. With a newfound courage, she took a step forward. "I'm not afraid of the truth. I've been living with the pain of not knowing for too long. If you know something, please tell me." The figure's eyes narrowed, their expression unreadable. For a moment, the silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of secrets long kept. Then in a swift motion they reached for the box, gripping it tightly. "You want the truth? Be careful what you wish for." With that, the figure turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Sarah alone in the chamber, the echo of their warning reverberating in her ears. Her heart raced as she considered her next move. The discovery of that box could hold the key to unlocking the mystery, but the cost of the truth remained uncertain. As she stood in the dimly lit chamber, Sarah knew one thing for certain. The stakes were higher than ever, and she was closer than she had ever been to uncovering the darkness that had claimed her father and so many others. The confrontation was only beginning, and the truth was waiting to be revealed, no matter how dangerous that revelation might be. In the days that followed, Sarah meticulously pieced together the fragments of information, guided by the revelations from the figure in the shadows. With each new detail, the chilling reality of her father's disappearance began to crystallize. What had once seemed like an insurmountable mystery now appeared as a complex web of lies, betrayal, and hidden lives. As she approached the authorities with her findings, skepticism still lingered. Many had long since given up on her father's case, but Sarah's unwavering determination began to shift the tide. With enough evidence in hand, the police reopened the investigation. The shadows that had cloaked the truth for years were finally beginning to lift. The investigation unveiled a harrowing tale, a double life that her father had lived, one intertwined with a criminal organization that had sought to silence him. It became clear that his disappearance was not just a tragic accident, but a calculated act of violence by those who felt threatened by the truth he was prepared to expose. As the walls began to close in on those responsible, Sarah found herself facing them, a confrontation she had long imagined but never truly prepared for. In a tense meeting, the culprits were confronted by law enforcement, their facade crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. In that moment, justice, though hard-fought, began to take shape. Families long burdened by unanswered questions were finally given the closure they desperately needed. For Sarah, the pain of loss transformed into a fire of resilience, illuminating the path toward healing. As the dust settled on the case, Sarah reflected on the journey she had undertaken. It was a journey marked by sorrow, fear, and ultimately, an unyielding quest for truth. She learned that justice is not merely a destination, but a continuous journey, often fraught with obstacles and unexpected turns. In the end, the truth emerged, not as a singular, clear-cut narrative, but as a complex tapestry woven from the lives of many. It reminded those left behind of the fragility of life, the depths of deception, and the enduring strength of love. As Sarah stood in front of her father's memorial, she whispered a promise to him and all those who had suffered in silence. "I will not forget. I will not stop seeking the truth. For every unanswered question, there lies a story waiting to be told. And sometimes it takes the heart of a relentless seeker to bring that story to light." What will you uncover when you dare to dig deeper into the shadows of your own truths?